Welcome to Cut the Fluff, a space where we drop the small talk, peel back the curtains, and truly delve into what it is that makes us tick and what's keeping us up at night. You can expect honest, raw, and very vulnerable conversations.
What's your story? What's your sign? It's like we're twin flames in a different life. Deep connection lights a spark. It's like you know me in the depths of my heart. We're dreamers.
Hiya folks, welcome to the very first episode of Cut the Fluff. We're excited to have you join us for the journey. As you can probably recognize in this very first episode, Anika and I are both just trying to find our feet in the podcasting realm. We want to keep things really raw, honest, and vulnerable, so we look forward to taking you on the adventure with us. In today's episode, we'll be looking at self-preservation, what that actually means, and what it looks like during a pandemic. We'll also discuss navigating conflict, particularly when individuals have opposing views, and the ability to actually change your mind once you've been presented with new information. Annika and I both touch on the theme of a Renaissance woman, which Anika will go into detail about during the episode. And we also highlight what aspect of this pandemic has been the most challenging for us both and how we're doing our best to navigate it. We hope you enjoy this episode, and if you like it enough, subscribe and leave us a comment. This is starting.
Okay.
Oh, all right. So we decided that we would start recording from the very beginning of this little project that we've decided to take on. Do you want to introduce yourself, Anika?
I think my hair introduces me.
What kind of look are we going for at the moment?
Oh, okay. We're sporting I think this is the more glam mum bun. So what I've done, I've washed it and I've twisted it up into a little butterfly clip there. And what you get is like a little bird's nest effect.
Perfect for that bar and wildlife just to come and...
Yeah. Reflects my state of mind right now.
A bird's nest.
Right to the call. Yep, my name is Anika Patel, and I'm sure we will divulge more about ourselves as we get into it. Who are you?
I'm Daniela Rose. I think the whole concept behind starting this podcast, I think we should delve into that. And I don't know if we both agree about this perspective. Firstly, we don't even have a name for it just yet. And I think we wanted to really take you along with us in the process because I think we have a really big tendency to only start projects when we deem them perfect and just to prove that things can evolve and they should evolve. So we'll probably look back on this initial video and go, oh my Lord, are you serious? This is where we started. But as long as we keep on getting better and better from here.
I think we should take the listeners on the journey of like how we even got here, why we're even recording. Well, I think it was born out of just some really deep and meaningful conversations, often with me in the car on the way to pick up kids and you on a walk, flustered and over it and things percolating. And I think it came out of a space of just wanting to keep it real and like get past all the small talk and the facade of like, oh, I'm doing so well, I'm doing great, the world is great, and get into some of the meat and potatoes of like what's really going on under the hood. And I think when you shared your experiences, what was going on in your life in that moment, I felt myself reflected back to me, and I felt like that created a shared space. And I was like, I think other women or other men are feeling this too. And I think it just progressed over a few conversations of every time we pick up the phone, we're like, we should have recorded that because maybe that would have, if they were a fly on the wall, maybe they would have got insight or felt heard and seen, which I think in these times, that's what people are craving the most, is to feel heard, seen, connected, part of something bigger than themselves. And so, yeah, here we are showing up pretty raw and ragged.
Here we are. And I think as well, there's not much that will be left off the table in these conversations. Do you know how funny I was actually having to think before we started recording? I was like, how do I want to state that how this idea started? And you've perfectly kind of packaged that up. And it is truly about those moments that we've had and we're like, damn it, we should have recorded this. And
I think we should like ease our listeners in. But Oh, I think what's top of mind is actually something you posted last night about self-preservation. And like, we're 18 months into a pandemic and we've been living with this for a while now. And I think the initial like fight or flight response is starting to wane and it's starting to take a toll on people. And you articulated that in your post on Insta last night of like, the name of the game right now is self-preservation. And if that means stepping offline and away from toxic conversations and things that don't fill you up and fill your cup, then you're doing yourself a disservice. And I think that would be interesting to dive into. And maybe you can tell us more about what you were thinking when you wrote that. Like, did that come from like a final straw for you? Did something tick you off yesterday to go,
There's, I think, a couple of elements that really play into it. As I started with the post, that it's common themes that I'm hearing that are kind of echoing throughout all of the conversations that I'm having with friends, family, loved ones, witnessing online. And it is, people are experiencing a sense of numbness, a sense of detachment, a sense of dis-ease within the body. Ultimately, we've almost become desensitized, and we have had to, in some way, in order to preserve ourselves, to be able to get on with our futures, even though we don't necessarily have any form or concept of what that looks like, because it's changing by the minute. And for me personally, I think I've found the online environment quite activating at times over the past couple of weeks, particularly with there's so much going on. People have, their perspective on things, and then there are so many things happening in, for example, Afghanistan, and I'm quite an empath and I feel emotion, and I'm really kind of trying my best just to navigate this space as gracefully as I can, totally understanding the fact that everyone is witnessing this, what's going on, through their own reality, through their own set of eyes, through their own set of conditioning, and just trying to lead with empathy, a space of, I guess, compassion as well, because we're all just trying to do our best within this time. And yeah, it's been a really, really challenging 18 months. So I think that's where the post really kind of came from for me, and just a reminder to people that they truly have the ability to step back and nurture themselves. And I use the expression of, we really need to find a way to continue filling our own wells, because only then can we start pouring into the cups of others. And in all honesty, we need each other to get through these next couple of years, or however long this is going to drag out for. And I hate saying that, because I'm naturally an optimist at heart, but it's getting hard. It's really getting challenging to just even, I really love visualizing, and I'm super into manifestation, and but that's even getting challenging. I find it a bit sticky at this point in time. So I'm very much at the point where I've just had to shut off to preserve, in order to maybe one day, in 2 weeks' time, I can take another step forward. And it's just that loop that I find myself in at the moment. And I don't know about you, if there's any particular coping mechanism that you've developed in this time.
Yeah, I mean, I relate to all of that. And I think what I'm trying to do at the moment is be really aware of when I'm getting triggered, or when I'm at the break point, and then that's when I lash out. And like trying to circumvent that just before it happens, or not even just before it happens, like in the lead up, like 24 hours prior. And I hear you, like, I'm a meditator, but my God, that's feeling hard sometimes. And I sit there and I'm like, just focus on the space around you. And it's like my body is like kicking and screaming and doesn't want to do it. So for me, like what we've been doing this week is playing music in the house. I find that's an instant mood shift, and dancing with the kids. And like I can see your oil diffuser there, like burning oils, and like lathering myself before this call. I'm like lathered up in doTERRA all over my body. But I find like those sensorial things and those things that ground us are like they're a quick win for the body, and they're not the long-term permanent thing you can do, but I think they just like get you over the starting line to then move into a space where you can go, oh, I can sit my body down and do a meditation or like work up to doing a 40-minute workout. But you're not going to get there unless you like satiated that noise inside of your body and your head, like chatty mind.
Would you consider yourself someone that has the monkey mind?
I didn't before, but now like I sit back and I listen to the voices.
Okay. As an observer. So you almost take a back seat and take a seat and witness the conversations that are actually going on.
Oh, yeah. That, and I've noticed replaying social interactions. Like my mum and I had a pretty gnarly interaction 2 days ago. My mind really likes to like do the merry-go-round on, like I'll replay it and replay it and replay it.
Yeah. So ruminate on like what was. Do you know, actually, here's a fun thing. So I heard this in a podcast a couple of weeks ago. This is total sideline, but worry is about the future. Rumination is about the past. So I heard that. So you're finding yourself in kind of a state of rumination constantly. Is that right?
Yeah. Like what happened? Like I think that's good to go back and become aware of what happened and think about how you would do it differently next time. But I think it's a fine line that you go back and you ruminate so much that you recreate the story, or you like reposition it in your mind, you reframe it. And so it's like you said before, it's like my reality through my perspective of how I viewed that situation versus how my mum saw it. And then last night when I was like, hey mum, what happened between us? She was like, no, I don't want to go there.
Okay, so she's still kind of quite reserved and not wanting to delve into the whole conversation. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we can dive into that if you like.
I don't know if you want to go that pathway or it's really up to you if you want to delve into that, or if we maybe want to discuss when we do come up in times of conflict, maybe some of the things that you found really assist with kind of diffusing firstly your own space and then being able to come back into a space and I guess get the best result out of it for everyone that has been involved in the disagreement or whatever it may be. So I'll let you choose which pathway we want to go down today. This is how off the cuff we are, folks. Yeah.
I think because that's fresh. And then I want to hear your technique for this, because I think what this showcases is communication is a minefield. Like I have degrees in communication and I teach people communication at work, how to communicate better at work, how to get along with people, how to create rapport. And then you come back to your own household and you're like, fuck, I can't even get it right with my mum. Or then here I am in the kitchen fighting with my partner. I'm like, I've failed.
In that moment, out of curiosity, do you feel like a fraud? So when you have those moments in the household and then you're out there in the world, teaching people how to be the best leaders, how to have, emotional intelligence or whatever it may be, do you have those moments where you're kind of like, oh God, should I actually...
imposter? Yeah.
Sorry?
A big imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Who the hell do you think you are with your big boots on teaching rapport building and EQ, and you can't even get it right with your mum, like your mum's pissed at you. So look, I think we are human and it's part of the human experience that we learn from these experiences and like we can only improve. I think that idea hit home for me a few years ago when I just divulged my whole family.
That's okay. Let it flow, my friend.
I think that I used to think that the perfect relationship, whether it's like a love relationship or a friendship, meant that you never have conflict. And I just don't think that's true. I think healthy conflict, where even though mum and I have had a tiff, I know we will come back from this and we'll sit down with a clear head and work through it. But I think without that conflict, I mean, some people do it, but I think the conflict is healthy. I think you've got to have different beliefs about things and you've got to have your edge, and that edge gets triggered. And then I think it's like a bone that breaks, it comes back stronger when it does come back together, the relationship's better for it. So maybe it sounds like I'm skirting around the
I totally agree. I think we're witnessing in today's society is that kind of tiptoeing. No one's willing to have a different perspective, or some people are actually keeping their opinions to themselves, firstly because they're preserving their own energy, just because they're met with so much backlash. And I just feel like as a whole, we don't even have the space to have conversations anymore that, it might not mean that we're all in alignment and, seeing things eye to eye, but there's almost no space for the actual conversation in between anymore.
Yeah.
And I was listening to a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he was a lecturer for journalism, and he brought the topic of Trump up on the table during class, and he noticed something quite interesting. Anyone that was below the age of 25 refused to take part in the conversation. It was only individuals over a certain age bracket that were willing to step in and have opposing views.
Wow.
So, and he's like, this is actually quite concerning because no one's actually speaking up. No one's putting forth their point of view. And it's almost like we haven't nurtured that level of being able to not see eye to eye with somebody else, but still have the ability to sit, listen, observe, and potentially take something away. You don't necessarily need to agree with the other person, but it's just this cancel culture of just like heads butting and there's nothing in between.
Oh, I know. And I was thinking about this on the drive home before our discussion today. And I was like, you know what? That idea of being able to have discourse, like conversation and discussion and talk to people that have different points of view, permission to change your mind. Like, I think that is part of being human, like permission to change your belief system 180 degrees on what you once believed is okay. And I think that's healthy. And I think that needs to happen in order for humanity to progress, is you have to be willing to put down belief systems that don't serve anymore, instead of this like righteousness to like hold on to it, to a shroud of what you think is truth until the end, when it's like, it's okay. Hey, it's cool to say I was wrong, or I'm willing to see a different perspective in light of new information, new data. I think you're right. Like, that has been beaten out of people, just the very like lay it out on the table to have a conversation. And I think that's where this kind of started, is like, we don't have to believe the same things, but we should be able to talk about them freely and not feel like Danny's not going to be my friend if I tell her that I think this about this thing. So
we're all I'm starting to see it, play out, particularly in this day and age. Like, even I'll bring up a very particular scenario is I have a cohort of friends who are vegans and who are very passionate about the cause. But then I also have noticed other individuals in my surrounds that no longer feel like they can share particular things on their social media that doesn't align with the people that they're associating with, and they're almost being silenced in some way. And it's just this very kind of, I'm not in any way, shape or form pointing the finger, but it's just a scenario that I've kind of witnessed play out and dynamics playing out. And yet they have no ability to change their mind. Maybe someone initially went down the path of trying veganism and then realized, okay, this doesn't actually sit right with me. It's not benefiting my health, etc. But now I can't almost change my mind because I feel this innate pressure from the external world and the people that I've associated myself with, that now it's a detriment to my own mental health, my own health just generally. So it's just, that's something that I'm witnessing quite openly from my perspective.
Yeah, I think that sort of is the container for the climate we're living in. So no matter what topic we talk about, I think that's the lens in which we're looking at these things. Like, it's sort of a different topic, but one thing that we touched on in the early days was the idea of I don't think you like the term, and now I'm like, yeah, maybe it's not the right term, but Renaissance woman.
in all honesty, I had to Google what Renaissance woman meant. I was like, she keeps on saying Renaissance. Oh, okay, I get it. So
I must have heard it once and like grabbed onto it because I was like, oh, Renaissance, like the birth of art, of culture, of like new thinking, of just these like open minds and this ability to express and create, and like, wow, what a time to be alive after such oppression and like sitting on your hands and being fearful, like boom, like flowers bursting out. And so I took that to be like the Renaissance woman in today's age is like that woman who is not segregated to or relegated to like one stream of thinking, of one vocation, of like one way of being. It's the woman or man, I love a Renaissance man too.
Or them, they, whatever they,
identify. But the idea that you can be multiple things at once and that's okay. And so like we got chatting a while ago about the stigma that's attached to what do you do for work? What do you do for a living? And that question that can cause such anxiety, such social anxiety for a Renaissance person, you know?
And this whole theme of the ability to change your mind, I think, comes into this as well, because I feel a lot of us, finished a particular thing when we left high school, and I don't feel like it's so much expected anymore to stay in the one field from that point onwards. But yes, the whole concept of a Renaissance woman.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard because you studied one thing, put a lot of cash into that, a lot of time. There's a lot of expectation on you from whoever, be it family, friends, like even like family friends who are watching from afar. So I think that's it's poignant in my life because I'm clearly Renaissance woman. Like I have a hand in many things and I create an income from many things. And I quite like that. Like I have the option to go full time and do one thing. I think I like the path of the Renaissance woman, but I'm aware of the weight of the stigma that carries. And like it's a bit of an uphill battle. Like you're constantly having to calibrate who's the audience I'm talking to when they ask, what do you do? Like, and I don't want to alienate people or like not position yourself correctly. Has its whole host of issues that come with it.
Do you feel like that is something that you've perceived as necessary, or have you actually witnessed it play out, the judgment of the fact that, for me personally, as of when the pandemic hit last year, I've had to diversify my income across 4 streams just to make sure that I can make ends meet. I don't need to be across the 4 streams, but I just have backup now to ensure that, if one stream goes down because of a lockdown, I've got something to back me up. Have you felt and heard it reflected from the external world, or is that something and a story that you've actually developed internally?
Definitely, probably a self-imposed limiting belief. Probably created because I heard it once from someone who, well, not once, like I continually hear, like, I don't get what you do.
That statement directed directly towards you?
Yeah, and to like one of my areas of like expertise or the work that I do is in design thinking and workshops and facilitating discussions that need to happen from multiple stakeholders. And it's kind of like doing a ropes course, but in your mind. And so you're creatively thinking through problems and coming up with new answers. And it's pretty abstract. Like people go, I don't know how to place you in a box. Like, couldn't you just say, you're an architect, or you're this thing or that thing? And I think I've probably internalized that as a bit of a struggle in terms of positioning what I do to the world. For example, putting together a new website. It's like, and I've told you this at length, like, I work in corporate, but I also really, like, my heart is with women in our age bracket, 20s, 30s, 40s, and helping build leadership capacity there. And to me, that's like, that's a separate kind of realm to corporate facilitated workshops.
But don't you feel, out of curiosity, the fact that you have these different highways and elements that you've worked within, that makes you even more well-rounded to be able to provide a particular type of product? She's crossing her fingers right now. I can assure you, you do have it in you, and we need to stop this internal doubt.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head.
Like, even for me, and my
do you feel
career path has been so disjointed. So I left school. I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to be a model, but that wasn't considered a real career path, particularly with European parents. Went on to study event management, had a pretty good 10-year career. You know, I almost was earning six figures at one point, and then had a mental breakdown. In that whole time, I was modeling as well. And then I decided to go off to LA and start modeling full time. While I was in LA, because I was so used to the constructs of having regular income and a framework and a daily schedule that I was so used to, when I actually arrived in LA, the modeling world, you have no consistency. You don't know if you're going to get a job tomorrow, in the next week. You don't know where your next paycheck's coming through. So I really needed to stabilize my emotional and internal roller coaster. And through that is when I came across yoga and the whole health realm, which I'm now really drawn to. So I've got, I'm a copywriter. I'm a content creator. I'm a yoga teacher who also teaches meditation. I'm an events manager. I'm a model. And so I have all these skill sets, a jack of all trades. Am I a master of one? I don't know. But in saying that, the fruitfulness and the depth, I guess, that comes from having those experiences that aren't just this kind of one path, allow me to be able to see and, I think, witness other people's experiences from a different perspective, because I haven't just stuck to the one career path.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you feel the same with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the flip side. And I think that's why we keep showing up and choosing the Renaissance lifestyle, because you and I both know that you could go back to full-time. You could easily roll back into event management or some other corporate gig or some other 9-to-5 job. But I think the silver lining to being the Renaissance woman and having these multiple levels of experience is because, hopefully, you do feel, I feel like you have multiple vantage points, and it gives more access points to feel what other people are going through and to understand what their world might be like. Just more tools to play with. Some days I'm doing hypnotherapy with people, and then other days I'm getting to speak on stage to people about creativity and innovation. And while they don't always connect, I think the issue, and my internal issue, is for me to feel whole. And I think that's the aim of the game, is people want to feel whole. I don't want to feel disjointed and pieces of me don't connect. But when I can see a through line through presenting on stage connects 100% to the hypnotherapy, and it connects to being a great mom, and it connects to being a human trying to figure out life in a pandemic that seems like it will never end. I think you have to see pieces of yourself through all those different lenses that you're showing up in the world. The disconnect for me is when I can't quite fit it in a container. There's no nice bow for me on it. And so when I sit down and I try and write the web copy for my new website, it's I have such a hard time because it has to connect. I want someone to be able to see all of me. And maybe this is another tangent to go down of is that what people want? Is that when you walk into a room, do you want people to see all of you? I mean, not the parts that are the personal, but don't you want to be seen for all of you?
Absolutely. And I think, it's so funny. I was actually thinking about this concept, and I'm so glad you brought this up, but the whole concept of masks, we have a different mask that we always apply no matter which setting we walk into. And I would like to challenge this because I really want to lead from a place of speaking my truth and always showing up as the one consistent individual. But you can't help changing your pitch a little bit depending on where you are. And even things that go through my mind, with the modeling realm, I have, done the whole California hot, bikini girl. And I'm like, will that ever come to bite me in the ass later down the track if I decide to go back to corporate? But then I start thinking, I'm like, no, but that's who I am. That was my experience. I lived that. I went overseas by myself, and tried chasing my dreams overseas. I did that. So that's something that I should be proud of, not ashamed of. And I feel that, we have this tendency of kind of showing up with masks. And I keep on challenging myself. I'm like, why is it like that? Why do I still feel some level of pressure to just alter, minute things? I'm not changing myself as a complete human, but you change your tone, you change your pitch.
Why? And like, I really believe that we're selling out our soul. Like, I don't know if it's something about tipping over into your 30s. I'm a little bit older, but I'm like midpoint. I'm at that point. I've just had a birthday. I'm like, oh, in fact, I'm not even like early 30s anymore. I'm like on the other side. But
welcome.
On the other side of like the halfway point in your 30s is like, it sounds like you're already feeling this, is like getting to know yourself and in your skin of, I would rather not sacrifice a piece of me and who I am and the way I show up in order to fit in and wear the mask than like give up a piece of who I am. And so I'm in this weird, uncomfortable place of like figuring out how that looks and when I show up in different social situations and work situations. And I think the first key is awareness. Like, I noticed it on a Zoom call the other day it was a corporate workshop with like 50 partners, this firm, and like super corporate. And I showed up a few minutes before the call and I had put like my Zoom uniform on for work. So I had a blazer.
Party up top. I mean, party down bottom. Up top, we're all corporate.
Exactly. But my team called it, like the design team. I jumped on a few minutes earlier with them and they're like, whoa, what are you doing? You're like super corporated up, Annie. And I was like, yeah, like I have to be there's a certain look that people expect of me. And they're like, you're pretty casual around here now. Like, you don't have to do that. I mean, you look great, but not expected. And I think, wow, like I'm just reflecting on that now. Like maybe we put those expectations on ourselves that we think people expect us to show up a certain way, but showing up as yourself is what people want. Like they want all of you. They want, the raw version of you. And so like took it all off, was casual, and I could feel my natural self coming through. And even though you're right, like you have to sort of edit it a little bit to show up in situations. So I wasn't completely like off the cuff and swearing, but I felt more me. So, I mean, that's a tiny example of like catching yourself in the moments of like, who am I doing this for? Am I selling myself out a little bit? And who's placing these expectations on me? Is that me? Oh, that's me.
That's a nice little catch though.
Right. And I mean, I felt awkward in a blazer anyway. Who wears blazers anymore?
Yeah, get rid of that thing. Particularly now that you're in Byron Bay. I didn't expect that blazer to come out.
I've got some rapid fire questions for you. Daniela.
Yes. Yes, Anika.
What would be your last meal on earth?
I think it would be a smoothie bowl. I'm the self-proclaimed smoothie bowl queen, so I'd probably go a smoothie bowl.
Anything in it in particular?
If I wasn't having my high histamine reactions, it would be banana, spinach, avocado, some protein powder, some collagen powder, and maybe some maca powder with some delicious like paleo granola on top.
So like a green monster choco smoothie?
Oh, I probably wouldn't go chocolate protein powder, go vanilla.
Sorry.
How about you?
Ooh, right back at you.
Yeah. So we'll do these rapid fire questions, but one person chooses the questions, but we both must answer.
It'd be some Asian fusion.
Mm.
It's a bit of like, that's the category, but something spicy. Do you want to throw out a rapid fire question?
Oh, what has
That's
been the most challenging thing coming out of the C word, which is what's going on in the world right now?
What we just talked about before, being able to safely share a point of view, information, a belief system, that has felt really challenging and unsafe, and like still super uncomfortable for me, if I'm honest, because I'm breaking up with an identity of myself that wants to fit in with people that know me a certain way. And like the little black voice of truth in me is like, no, not good enough for you. You've got to start speaking your truth. You've got to speak up. You've got to stand up. You've got to be an example for your kids. I think that's been the biggest personal struggle, is like finding my edge of like what's healthy for me to share with people before it becomes like you're just getting attacked.
And that
it's
whole loop of self-preservation is coming into like many people are staying quiet because they just need to self-preserve in order to get through this.
Yeah. And like prior to this call, I admitted to you, I was like on a deep dive down a rabbit hole, and I'm like, I'm angry about it and I want to share about it, but discerning between that line of what is helpful noise out there, because fuck, it's noisy, and what's important to speak up about in order for like fellow Australians to feel heard and seen. And then what is just like a time to keep your mouth shut, because everybody's and I believe this, like everybody's choice is their own to make. And it's not my right to impose my beliefs on them about that, but it is my right to share a point of view. And so that's challenging, finding that balance. You?
For me personally, I had to go through a stage of mourning. I was due to go back to LA. I had come from this really kind of high life of like finally following my dreams, going over to LA, absolutely loving the experience, and then felt like I had my wings clipped. I'm now 30. I'm going to hit 32 this year in October. And I've really just had to I felt like I've been in this like tug of war internally, and this state of limbo of, am I going to go back? Am I not? And then my visa lapsed, and I almost had to go through this stage of mourning that that's no longer a possibility. And I've had this internal voice as well of, oh, that's such a first world problem, but it's my reality and I need to honor that. And that's okay. And I think, beating myself from that side has been just sitting with that voice as well and being like, no, I'm allowed to have this process and mourn the fact that I've, things haven't panned out the way I expected them to. But also just trying to figure out what this next phase looks like for me personally, not having a grasp on what, everything's so unpredictable at the moment. And a lot of the spheres that I work in really rely on things being open. So I'm in the process of reinventing myself right now. And that has been probably one of the most challenging and confronting things. And particularly coming back from Los Angeles, where I had the ability to expand and it was kind of a clean slate where I stepped into a foreign space and was able to start choosing my friendships based on where I was at that point in my life, and start choosing, better choices for my health, etc. And then I've returned back home, had my wings clipped, and it's almost like this framework that was laid down when I was in Australia, and I'm coming back with this like new program or motherboard or whatever and trying to fit it back on an old framework. And it's kind of like, I'm just trying to figure out how I fit within this space and with everything that's going on. And I think that's truly been the most challenging thing for me personally.
I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. I mean, I relate to that deeply. And it feels like even when you describe the motherboard, trying to fit onto the old is a bit of that like, oh, I want to fit in with like my old self. I think some of those pieces just inherently will never fit back. That is the uncomfortable growth as humans of like, sliding off into another dimension here, and like in that limerence, that feeling of like not knowing like the ground beneath you is really fucking scary.
Amen.
So I mean, I think in another episode we could get into like how do you navigate that like bumpy landing, but the realization that it's not going to fit, and then how you reinvent from a new platform.
Because I'm very much in it at the moment. And I think, you know, the whole concept of this podcast was we all have a tendency of speaking after the fact, of like we look at things in hindsight, whereas this is very much a space where we'll be discussing things coming up right here, right now, the process that we're going through internally, which is so, I don't know, there's an element of me that's so excited about it. And I'm naturally an oversharer, but there's also like, you know, I've got to package this up and make it look nice because I can't have people knowing the raw aspect of me. So I'm very much open to discussing that process from a space of currently being in it rather than a hindsight perspective.
Yes, I love it. Let's do it going forward.
Are you feeling comfortable with calling this our first episode of whatever this is?
What is this dog's breakfast of insightful combo? And if this never makes it to air, I had a great time just chatting to you as always.
Me too, my love. And to anyone out there watching, hello. Thanks for tuning in and staying with us this far. If you've got any suggestions on names. So we had No Right Way, the Renaissance Woman, and what was the other one? I was actually going to say The Fumble because we're all just fumbling through life.
Taking it up as we go. The Fumble.
The Fumble.
The Fumble Diaries.
Taking suggestions, folks, in the comment section below, please. We send you love and light wherever you are in the world. And until next time, whatever this is. Maybe that's what the name is, whatever this is. Peace.
Ciao, ciao. Bye.